welcome to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton, and welcome to the first opposition view of the season against our first home game against Watford. I'm here with Mike Parkin from the Rookery End podcast, the Watford podcast. How you doing, Mike?
Yeah, really good, thanks. Well done for getting the name right, but it's hard to say from the Rookery End podcast, so fair play to it.
So we're going to start with the obvious questions about Watford, of course. Watford's results last week against Brighton, you lost 3-0. What the hell happened?
Really difficult to say. Really, really poor performance from first minute to last. Never really got going. I think we probably, looking back on it, we had a decent 5 or 10 minute spell early in the game, but didn't ever really look that threatening. It was always, it just looked very limp. You know, sometimes you get those games where nothing works, and I don't mean it when I say it, but you know, when the players don't look interested, it looked like a pre-season friendly, really. And I know obviously that the players are interested; they were giving it their all, but nothing was coming off. And it was really, really easy for Brighton. They didn't have to get out of second or third gear throughout the whole 90 minutes, and yeah, we're worthy winners in the end. It was hugely disappointing and probably a bit surprising, really. None of us really expected it. So we'll be looking to bounce back. Basically, for us, our season starts on Saturday. After that, we're all trying to block it out as much as possible and go again on Saturday. Not going to be easy, obviously.
I think it goes the same for us Everton fans. After last week, we drew 0-0 at Crystal Palace. Again, it looked very pre-season-esque from us as well. So I think both sides are trying to bounce back from disappointing opening weekends. I mean, of course, Watford, you didn't get a point either, so it's probably even more of an attempt to bounce back for you guys. But it's very at odds. I was surprised that you struggled so much on the first game, because everything we saw from you last week was at odds with what we saw last season on the Harry Gracia, of course.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, what I would say was the end of the season was pretty poor. The end of the season running was bad, and ironically, the last clean sheet we kept was in February. Can you guess who that was against?
You can never guess. You'll have to help me out.
It was Everton. Everton at Vicarage Road. That's the last time we kept a clean sheet, all the way back in February. So perhaps there have been some warning signs as the season crept on. Our form did sort of dissipate a little bit. But yeah, as you say, surrendering like that at home 3-0 has not been a hallmark of Javi Gracia's Watford. And yeah, it came as a huge surprise. And just I don't know, the FA Cup final, we kind of wrote off. Anyone can lose heavily to Man City. We know that they're a different breed of.
Stam got beat 5-0 last week.
Sorry?
Stam got beat 5-0 last week.
Yeah, exactly. So we kind of wrote off the cup final. It was a one-off, but the end of the season form wasn't great as well. So what we were looking to do was have a good start to the season, which we've had in previous years. Certainly in the since we've come back up to the Premier League, we've had decent results on the opening day, including a 2-2 draw at Everton in our first game back in the Premier League a few years back. So yeah, it came as a surprise. It was very un-Watford-esque, although, like I say, there were some warning signs towards the end of last season. It doesn't look like they've managed to sort of blow those cobwebs away. Of course, none of the new starters, or the big name new starters, Sarr wasn't playing, and Welbeck wasn't playing. Craig Dawson, the other main signing over the summer transfer window, he didn't have a great game at centre back, so he'll be looking to put things right. But yeah, you're right. It was a completely unexpected, un-Watfordy performance, and I think they'll be working doubly hard in training to make sure that there's not a repeat on Saturday.
Well, you mentioned the new summer signings, Sarr, Welbeck, Dawson. What have you thought of Watford's summer transfer business?
Hard to tell at this stage. Obviously, with losing the first game 3-0 doesn't look great. I think Dawson is a sensible signing. Not very much money, certainly in relative terms these days. He's got Premier League experience, playing for West Brom. No disrespect to West Brom, he'll have had plenty of experience defending against Premier League attack. So I think that's an area that we knew we had to strengthen. So bringing him in was sensible. And the other part of the pitch that we needed to strengthen was up front to increase our attacking options. Danny Welbeck is a no-brainer, really, for me. Really close. You know, obviously, those of you that know the Watford training ground, it's literally right next door to Arsenal's training ground. He lives in Hertfordshire, so very limited upheaval for Danny Welbeck. So you can see why the appeal of the move for him. And obviously, the deal will be structured that he gets paid on a pay-as-you-play kind of deal. So for Watford,
you have played the blind if that is the case.
Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense, and I think any club that was going to take him on, obviously he's had he hasn't played since he broke his ankle, and he's had injury worries before then. So I think any club who was seriously in for him was going to have some sort of sensible structure in place. But this is a deal that's been quite a while in the making. I think came as a bit of a bolt out of the blue for most people, but Watford have been working on it. They tried to sign him in the last window. So this one's been bubbling under for a little while. But I think that's a sensible signing. I think him, Andre Gray and Troy Deeney offer different things up front and can perhaps spark off each other. So it gives us another option up top. So excited to see him. He'll be looking to kickstart his career. He'll be wanting to achieve more things in the game than he has already. As we talked about, he's had terrible injuries, disrupted his career. So he'll be wanting to get going again, and no better place to do it than at Watford. And then there's our record signing, Sarr. He's not going to feature definitely on Saturday. I don't think they think he's ready to play in the first team just yet. He only arrived at the club late last week and has been sort of integrating slowly into the squad. So we're not going to see him at Goodison on Saturdays, is my understanding. But I think he is an out-and-out winger, and that's something that Watford have definitely lacked, and was an area of the pitch that we needed to improve on. So we've splurged a reasonable amount of money on him, sort of 35 million quid up front, I think. But if he can provide that genuine threat down the flanks, delivering, providing ammunition for those strikers that we just talked about, then that could potentially be a huge signing. I'm going to be honest, I didn't see much of him before we were linked to him, and then I did what all football fans do when you get linked to a player. You hit YouTube, and invariably it's only the good bits that make it to YouTube, isn't it? So he looks a really exciting prospect, and I think there are other clubs in for him during the window. So pleased we've got him. But with all these things, I've been around long enough to not to get too excited till I've seen him actually perform. So we'll wait and see. But on the face of it, looks like a really decent transfer window for Watford. And the other thing to talk about is to say we've hung on to our key players, which is important as well.
Well, that was actually the next question I was going to ask you. We reportedly ourselves made bids for Abdoulaye Doucouré this summer. What were your thoughts on our attempts to maybe unsettle him, and how much would it have taken if we were to get him for you to actually sell him?
I think there's two things with Doucouré. I think he's looking for a move, and no, I know there's been a bit of toing and froing between Watford and Everton fans on social media and so on and so forth. But I mean it with the utmost possible respect. But I think Doucouré is looking for potentially Champions League football, at the very least Europa League football, which Everton aren't offering this year. So I think personally for the player himself, I think the move would probably be unlikely. After the interesting, shall we say, saga with Marco Silva, I think the Watford hierarchy probably would be loath to sell one of their star players to Everton, quite frankly. And if they were to do it, it would be at a premium. So in terms of money, I think if Everton was serious, I think you'd be looking at minimum 50, 55 million quid, 60 million quid to get Doucouré.
Interesting, because of course you're saying that they might be very reluctant to sell, but of course they did sell Everton Richarlison last summer. Yep. So it's strange. I know the saga took a bit of a bitter turn since the Richarlison deal with the whole compensation package, and it did leave a bit of a bad taste in the mouth, maybe particularly on your end with the Otto family, and that they weren't too pleased with that, were they?
No, I think it was the way that the approach happened, and that's water under the bridge as far as Watford are concerned, as far as I can tell. Marco Silva no longer worked for Watford. I thought it was pretty unimpressive the way he dealt with the interest from Everton personally, but I think we ended up with a decent deal. We ended up with Javi Gracia coming in, and obviously he's done a good job since. I think Richarlison was a great deal for both parties. I think if he goes on and does as well as we probably both think he can, it's going to be up around 50 million quid. The deal will be in the end. If that's the cost, he'll have done well for Everton, which you guys will be pleased with. And I spoke to some of your other Everton podcasts and shows when we sold him, and I said even if you do end up paying 50 million quid, I suspect you'll still end up turning a profit on him, because he's an incredible player. So I think that deal would work for both parties at the time. But I'd be surprised to see too many more of our crown jewels end up at Goodison.
Definitely. Of course, Richarlison is one of Everton's star assets, like you say. Another one of those now very much seems to be Moise Keane, who we brought in from Juventus. The next question I was going to ask you is, what have you made of Everton's transfer business? And there has been a lot of it this summer.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's so you mentioned Keane. I think he's the one that's got most people excited, hasn't he? But it's difficult as a Watford fan. I tend to focus on my own club, so I haven't really tracked Everton too closely. To be perfectly frank, I'm fascinated to see how Keane does. Obviously, an exciting young talent by the sounds of things. So it's always nice to see these players coming to the Premier League, because as football fans, when we're not being partisan and supporting our own clubs, I think we all like to see talent, don't we, in Premier League on match of the day on a Saturday evening, as long as they're not banging them in against our own club. So really excited to see him in action. But when it comes to Everton, really, I watch Marco Silva. It's fascinating to watch him and how he acts. And I said earlier, as we were all over it, and I'm going to prove that we're completely not now. But it was interesting. He's making a few noises post-transfer window about how hard it was, how he wasn't potentially able to get some of the targets that he was interested in, and he was feeling a little bit hamstrung, perhaps by whether it's finances at Everton or the nature of the market. And it's very interesting. He said some similar things at Watford at the end of the transfer window, at the end of the summer transfer window. So it almost feels like he's planting a few little seeds in advance. He's an interesting character, is Marco. So it'd be interesting to see how they get on and how Marco Silva sort of carries himself in the coming weeks. But Everton, you're aiming for Europe, I guess, is the target. So time will tell. I think it's at this stage of the season, I think it's difficult to as trying to, I'm old enough and a bit more sensible these days, although I probably know I don't look it. So I tend not to pass too much judgment on transfer windows until I've seen the team take shape. So hopefully you've done terrible transfer business and Watford win 3-0 on Saturday.
Well, you're suggesting there maybe that Marco Silva could maybe walk if results don't go our way, you're thinking?
I don't think he'll walk. I think he's there for the long term at Everton. I think he's made his bed now. I don't think if he sort of walks away again, his career in this country is going to be over. No one's going to touch him, are they?
I do think I agree with you 100% there. If he doesn't last it out at Everton, I think that's a big damage to his reputation.
Sure. It's just interesting that I don't know if you guys picked up on it at all, but just those comments about the transfer window, they sounded very, very familiar to us. But that said, what I will say for Marco Silva is that the football he had Watford playing before he left was phenomenal. And I know it was a bit of a topsy-turvy season for you guys last year. But if Marco Silva if he gets your team going, as you probably saw in I guess not as much as you would have wanted last year, but I think he's good. I think he's got the capacity to be a real decent head coach, and if he has got that mix right, then Everton could be in for a decent season.
Well, that's the next question. Where do you think Everton will finish?
The thing I have with Everton, I think they've made quite a lot of poor decisions over the past sort of 3, 4, 5, 6 years. They've ended up paying off managers that for years after left the club. So I think there's a bit of, I don't know, they need to break out of that poor decision making, don't they? Whether they've got that right now with Brands in doing the transfer stuff. Marco Silva, as we said, is going to be settled and focused, knowing that he has to stay there for a while and prove himself to be a success. So this could be a pivotal year for Everton. I think that the problem that you guys have got, and it's the same for us to a degree, is that the teams in that middle part of the Premier League pushing for Europe have got a lot better, a lot quicker. So, we saw Wolves come straight up and do decent things last year. I think Leicester have strengthened. It's going to be you guys. West Ham are going to be on the periphery as well. So I think it's going to be harder than ever. That middle section of the Premier League is probably more congested and more competitive than ever. So it's going to take a real strong season from Everton to get to where you want to be in the league.
What about Watford? Where do you think you guys will finish?
So hard to say. I'm still, like I said, I'm old, sensible and boring now. And the most important thing for me is that we get to those 40 points and we get to safety as quickly as possible. And then we can start looking at the table. We were in contention for Europe up until the last sort of 4 or 5 games last year, which for us is a terrific effort. And I think we'd be looking to replicate that when you come up to the Premier League from the Championship. You do sort of some of your supporters question, what's the point? You're never going to win the league. You're not going to qualify for the Champions League. So what do you want to do? And I think the answer for me is I want to see my team in Europe. You want, even if it is a Thursday night in Lithuania or the back end of nowhere, that's what it's about. You want those new experiences as a football fan. So, the dream is to challenge for Europe and to get close. Being a bit more pragmatic, I think we just need to improve. We just need to get incrementally better, which for us would be a top half finish, because that in turn makes us more attractive to signing new players and building and getting better and better. So the start we've had has given me pause for thought. We haven't had a bad start. We haven't lost so badly on the first day for a long time. So we're going to have to regroup quickly. But if we hit our straps, I think we'll be looking to break into that top half. But for me, that target is just staying up as quickly as possible, getting that 40 points as quickly as possible.
Fair enough. Ahead of the game, of course, on Saturday, what do you think Watford's lineup could be?
I think probably the only change we'll see potentially from Saturday is if we see Danny Welbeck start. There've been a few hints coming out of the club that he's close to being involved in the matchday squad. So I think that the only change that we'll probably see is him coming in. Delafeu, an old friend of yours, got substituted at half time in the Brighton game because he's been ill, but hopefully he'll be fit, and I'm sure he'll want to make an impact on his return to Goodison. So I think you'll see, I think you'll probably see the same side that we saw at home to Brighton, which is, if you want me to run through it, we've got Ben Foster in goal, Holebas, Dawson, Craig Cathcart, and then Firmino, Will Hughes, Abdoulaye Doucouré, Etienne Capoue, who's certainly one to watch out for, Pereira, Deeney, and Andre Gray.
Brilliant. So which one of those would you say is the real danger man? Who do you reckon could hurt Everton the most?
I think the midfield pairing, Doucouré and Capoue, when they're on song, they can be lethal. They work really hard defensively. They break up play. They make it difficult for the opposition to get into the game and to really get a foot on the ball and get into the game. So those guys can be really, really disruptive and really important. If those two are firing, then Watford are firing. Quite frankly, we need big games from those guys. They're our engine. If they're running at half tilt, then it's no good. And I think we need performances from either Delafeu and Pereira as well. They're the guys with a bit of creativity. They're the guys that make things happen. And again, if they're not at full tilt, we look a bit lackluster and a bit limp, like we did on Saturday. So that central midfield duo, Capoue and Doucouré, absolutely vital. And then we need one at least of Pereira and Delafeu to fire as well. So they're probably the guys that you would have your eyes on anyway. But they're the ones to look out for. You
say your midfield, if they're on song, could do the damage. They could be set, if you like, to capitalise on an issue Everton have got at the moment. Morgan Schneiderlin was sent off last week. Andre Gomez may be injured. Fabian Delph injured. There's only Tom Davis and the very much a rookie in the Premier League, Jean-Philippe Bouamman. So do you reckon that would be the main area where you could get a hold of the game?
Potentially. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those guys, Etienne Capoue, Watford's Player of the Year last year, and Doucouré, you guys were trying to sign him for a reason. He's an exceptional player, and they absolutely can boss games if they hit their stride. They're very, very difficult to deal with, both defensively and moving forward. They break up play in our own half and then transition quickly into attack. So yeah, absolutely, that's something that I'm sure the Watford will have picked up on and will be hoping to exploit. Absolutely.
Finally, prediction for the game?
Hate making predictions. I think what I love about this game is it feels like a big game already, doesn't it? I know it's your first home game in the season, so you guys will all be licking your lips about that, and there's always that buzz about the home game. But as we said at the top of the chat, we've both got something to prove. There's a little bit of history between the two clubs. So it feels like a big game, doesn't it? It feels like a really, really big game. It's exciting. There's a bit of history between Watford and Everton. Both clubs have got something to prove to their fans. Both clubs have got something to prove to each other's fans. So I reckon it'll be a blood and thunder, real high-octane game. I've got a sneaky feeling Watford might come away with something. I'm not going to say we'll win. I'm never that optimistic. I'm going to say another entertaining 2-2 draw. Take that.
A 2-2 draw is a very common result between these two sides in recent years, so it would not surprise me either. I want to say we edge it 2-1. Got to be optimistic at home, I suppose. Finally, last question. Favourite film and why?
Favourite film and why? My favourite film was Ghostbusters because it makes me laugh. Absolutely love that film. So, Ghostbusters.
Yeah, mine's Ferris Bueller for the very same reason.
Very good, very good. I might watch that this evening, actually, in your honour. A little tribute there.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to speak to you, Mike. Thanks so much for that. I'll let you get back to your kids.
No worries. Sorry about that. Cheers, mate. Enjoy the game.
Thanks very much, Mike. And thank you guys for tuning in. So there'll be plenty more content coming your way. And thanks for watching on the Toffee Blues.